They say silence is weakness. But sometimes silence is the loudest scream. I watched her walk away, proud, unbothered, certain I'd come running. She didn't know. I'd already stopped chasing things that hurt me. Her betrayal wasn't the end of me. It was the beginning of her reckoning. Because when you plant pain, you harvest consequences. And karma? Oh, karma never forgets an address. While she laughed, life started writing her downfall, line by line. I didn't have to expose her lies. They exposed themselves. In the end, all I did was watch as she fell into the trap she built for me. They say revenge is sweet, but this one tasted like justice. But before I continue, make sure you're subscribed to the Revenge by Sophia channel and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. We love to see how far our stories travel. The story began with laughter echoing through quiet mornings. Sunlight painted golden streaks across the kitchen table where they sat, sharing coffee and dreams. Her smile always came first, soft, confident, certain that love like theirs could never fade. He believed her eyes when they said forever. Their world felt small but safe, like time itself paused just for them. He would watch her hum to herself while cooking, the sound gentle enough to calm every storm inside him. But sometimes, even in that peace, a strange silence lingered, like the air before a storm. That silence would soon mean something he couldn't yet see. Days passed, and everything looked the same, yet somehow different. She started checking her phone more, smiling at messages she never explained. When he asked, she'd laugh it off. Just work, she'd say, brushing away his doubt with a touch too light, too easy. He wanted to believe her. Love made him blind to the sudden walls rising between them. At night, he noticed her lying awake, staring at the ceiling, lost in thoughts that didn't include him. The warmth between them felt like a candle fighting to stay lit in the wind. And deep inside, a quiet fear began to whisper. What if something was breaking? One evening, as rain tapped against the window, he looked at her, really looked. Her laughter felt forced, her eyes restless. She avoided his gaze, focusing on her phone again. Outside, thunder rolled, low and distant. Something inside him tightened, an unspoken alarm he didn't understand yet. The rain grew heavier, drowning out their words, until silence filled the space between them. She stood to leave the room, saying, "I'll be right back," but didn't return for a long time. That night, as he sat alone, he realized peace had a heartbeat, and theirs had just skipped one. The mornings no longer began with laughter. She'd wake early, move quietly, and leave the house before he could even say goodbye. Her perfume lingered in the air, a ghost of the woman she used to be. He'd stare at the untouched coffee cup she left behind, wondering when she stopped needing him. Conversations turned short, polite, almost robotic. Every word felt rehearsed, every smile too quick to fade. He started to notice the way her phone never left her hand, the way she turned the screen away when he walked by. The woman he once held close was still there. But her heart? It wasn't. It was his friend Amir who first said it out loud. "She's hiding something," he whispered, hesitant but firm. The words hit like a slap, sharp, unwanted, undeniable. He tried to defend her, to say she was just busy, stressed, tired. But Amir's silence said more than any argument could. That night, he replayed the past few weeks in his mind. Her late returns, the smell of unfamiliar cologne, the soft hum of a message notification in the dark. The puzzle pieces fit together too perfectly to ignore. Still, he told himself, no, she wouldn't do that to me. But the truth was already waiting, just beyond the next lie. One evening, he asked her, softly, almost pleading, "Are we okay?" She didn't look up from her phone. "Of course we are," she replied, smiling without meaning it. The smile didn't reach her eyes. It was the kind of lie that doesn't need proof. It's written in silence. The room felt colder somehow, as if even the walls knew something he didn't. He watched her walk away, her footsteps fading down the hall. And in that fading sound, he felt it. The first real crack in the world they built together. A crack that, soon enough, would break wide open. It happened on a quiet night, the kind that makes you think too much. She had fallen asleep on the couch, her phone still glowing beside her hand. He didn't mean to look, but curiosity has a way of pushing you toward pain. A new message flashed across the screen. "Last night was perfect. Can't wait to see you again." His breath caught. The room suddenly felt too small, too dark. The sound of the rain outside grew louder, like the world itself was reacting to what he'd seen. His hands trembled as he set the phone down, careful not to wake her. For the first time, he realized love can break without a sound. All night, he sat in silence, listening to her breathe. The woman who betrayed him while sleeping inches away. Words burned on his tongue, begging to be spoken, but fear held them hostage. What would she say? Would she deny it? Lie again? Make him feel crazy? He watched her sleep peacefully, her face soft and innocent, as if nothing in the world had changed. Inside, something inside him shattered quietly, not from anger but from knowing the truth had no comfort to offer. The clock ticked endlessly, each second heavier than the last. When morning came, he smiled like nothing was wrong. But his eyes no longer held love. Days passed, and he said nothing. She laughed, chatted, lived freely, unaware that he already knew. Every touch, every word between them became a performance, hollow and lifeless. He would look at her and see not a person, but the ghost of the woman he once trusted. Nights turned colder, dinners quieter. He began to study her, not as a lover, but as a stranger he was learning to forget. The distance between them grew, invisible, yet suffocating. And as he watched her smile at another message, he whispered to himself, "Let her play her part. I'll wait for the ending." Sleep became a stranger. He'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling. The echo of that message burned into his mind. Every laugh she faked, every word she spoke replayed in cruel detail. The clock on the wall became his enemy, ticking endlessly through hours that refused to end. He tried music, movies, even prayer, but nothing silenced the ache. The bed that once felt warm now felt like a battlefield. One side untouched, one side heavy with tears. Even the air felt different, colder, thinner, almost mocking. And somewhere between midnight and dawn, he whispered to the dark, "Why wasn't I enough?" Days blurred together. He stopped talking to friends, stopped eating, stopped existing in the way he used to. His reflection in the mirror looked like someone else. Tired eyes, unshaven face, an empty smile that didn't fit anymore. At work, people noticed his silence, but no one asked. He didn't want pity. He wanted peace. But peace wouldn't come. Every time his phone buzzed, a part of him died, hoping it was her, hating himself for hoping. When she finally did call, pretending everything was fine, his voice trembled as he said, "I'm busy." It was the first lie he told her, and it felt strangely freeing. One evening, as the city lights flickered beyond his window, he realized something. He could scream, confront her, demand answers, but none of it would fix what was broken. The love he gave was already buried under her lies. Instead of revenge, he made a silent promise, not to her, but to himself. He wouldn't beg. He wouldn't break. He would rise even if it took time. He poured a glass of water, stared at his reflection in the window, and whispered, "You don't chase those who enjoy watching you fall." And for the first time in weeks, the silence around him didn't feel empty. It felt powerful. The next few weeks turned into an act, and he played his role perfectly. He started dressing better, showing up early to work, smiling at people again. To everyone around him, he looked like a man healing, a man moving on. But behind that smile lived a storm that refused to fade. Every laugh felt rehearsed, every breath heavy with the weight of pretending. Sometimes when no one was looking, his eyes would drift, lost in thoughts of her voice, her lies, her betrayal. But then he'd blink, straighten his shoulders, and wear his calm like armor. He told himself, "If she sees me happy, she'll never know she destroyed me." People began to believe the lie. Even he almost did. Friends said he looked stronger, more confident, more alive. But every compliment cut deep, reminding him how much he was faking it. He'd scroll through her social media late at night, seeing her posts, her smiles, her life, as if nothing ever happened. The urge to message her burned inside him, but he fought it. He deleted her number one night, staring at the screen as if erasing her name would erase the pain. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance, the sky matching his mood. And as lightning flashed, he whispered, "I hope karma's watching." He didn't plan revenge. He didn't have to. Life had a strange way of balancing things on its own, so he focused on himself, working harder, eating better, even learning to enjoy his solitude. Slowly, his laughter became real again, his smile less forced. But deep inside, a part of him waited, not for her return, but for the inevitable fall that always follows betrayal. He could feel it, like a storm waiting just beyond the horizon, and somewhere deep down he knew when that storm finally came. He'd be there to watch. For a while, her world still looked perfect, at least from the outside. Photos of parties, fancy dinners, and laughter filled her social media like a movie reel that never ended. But behind the scenes, small cracks began to show. Her new relationship, the one she'd risked everything for, started to rot from within. The man she once adored now avoided her calls, made excuses, stayed busy. She started to sense it, the same cold distance she once gave to someone else. The irony cut deep. She didn't know it yet, but karma had already begun her work. And this time, she was the one left staring at unanswered messages. Rumors began to circulate, quiet at first, then louder. Her colleagues whispered behind her back. Her friends grew distant. She could feel their eyes on her, their laughter fading when she entered the room. The man she'd left everything for suddenly exposed her secrets in anger after a fight. Messages, screenshots, words she could never take back, all leaked into the world she once ruled. Her name started to taste bitter in other people's mouths. Every attempt to fix it only made it worse. She deleted her photos, shut her phone off, and sat in the dark, trembling. It was the same darkness she once left someone else to drown in. One night, she stood in front of her mirror. No makeup, no smiles, no pretending. Her reflection looked older, emptier, almost unfamiliar. "How did it come to this?" she whispered, voice breaking under her own guilt. She thought of him, the one who loved her, the one she hurt. Did he hate her? Did he think of her at all? The thought stung because deep inside, she wished he did. Tears rolled down her cheeks, smudging the remnants of her once perfect image. And in the silence of that empty room, she realized karma didn't destroy her. She destroyed herself. The city has a way of carrying secrets, like wind carries ashes, quietly, but everywhere. Soon her name was on every tongue, wrapped in gossip and pity. "Did you hear what happened to her? She used to be so perfect." The whispers followed her like shadows, even when she smiled and pretended not to hear. She walked through hallways filled with eyes that once admired her. Now they only looked with judgment. She could feel it, the shift, the distance, the slow crumbling of everything she built. Her laughter no longer echoed. It cracked. And somewhere in that noise, she began to understand what he once felt. Invisible, humiliated, small. One by one, the people she trusted disappeared. The same friends who cheered her lies now avoided her calls. Her co-workers spoke politely but never sincerely. The man she betrayed him for, gone, leaving behind only debts and unanswered messages. Her world shrank until it was just her and the echo of her own mistakes. Meanwhile, the one she hurt, he was rising quietly, glowing in peace, untouched by her chaos. She'd see glimpses of him through mutual friends, smiling, laughing, alive again. It made her heart twist in ways she didn't expect. Regret began to taste like metal on her tongue, bitter and cold. He never reached out, never gloated, never spoke her name again. But sometimes, from a distance, he heard about her. The job she lost, the friends she drove away, the sadness she tried to hide behind new posts. And every time he felt nothing. Not joy, not anger, just silence. Because revenge wasn't something he chased. It found her on its own. Late one evening, he looked at the sky, feeling the breeze move softly against his face. Karma speaks quietly, he thought, but when it does, the world listens. Years passed. Seasons changed. He had rebuilt his life piece by piece. stronger, calmer, untouched by the fire that once burned him. One rainy afternoon, while visiting a bookstore downtown, he heard a voice behind him. Soft, familiar. "Is it really you?" His breath caught. He turned, and there she was. Time had softened her beauty but deepened the sadness in her eyes. Her smile trembled, unsure, like a ghost unsure if it belonged in the light. The room seemed to shrink around them, leaving only silence and the quiet hum of the rain. For a heartbeat, neither spoke, just two souls facing the ruins of what used to be. They sat at a small cafe nearby, a place filled with the scent of coffee and quiet music. She tried to talk casually, but her words stumbled. "You look different. Happier," she said, forcing a smile. He simply nodded, eyes calm, distant. She looked down at her hands. No jewelry, no polish, no pretenses. Her voice cracked as she said, "I've made mistakes." The confession hung in the air like smoke, heavy and uninvited. He didn't interrupt, didn't comfort, just listened, as if her words were long overdue rain on old ashes. And with every second, she realized how much power silence truly held. As they walked out, the rain had stopped. The world outside shimmered, wet, clean, new. She looked at him one last time and whispered, "Do you ever think about us?" He met her gaze, eyes steady, voice quiet. "Sometimes, but not the way I used to." Her lips parted, but no words came. The truth hit harder than any insult could. He smiled politely, offered a nod, and turned away, his footsteps fading into the evening crowd. She stood there watching him go, realizing she was now the one left behind. And for the first time, she understood what silence can sound like. Absolute. Days after that meeting, she couldn't stop thinking about him. His calm, his silence, the way his eyes no longer carried pain when they looked at her. It haunted her. Every night she replayed their conversation in her head, wondering how someone she once broke could now stand so peacefully while she fell apart. The guilt crept in like frost on glass, slow, suffocating. She started writing him a message, then deleted it, over and over again, until one night, unable to hold it any longer, she typed, "Can we talk? Please?" She stared at the screen, terrified yet desperate. When he finally replied with one word, "Okay." Her heart stopped. They met again, this time under a dull streetlight outside a quiet cafe. The air was heavy, damp, like the world itself was holding its breath. She couldn't hide her tears this time. "I was stupid," she said, voice trembling. "You were the only one who ever really cared." He said nothing, his expression unreadable, the calmness in his eyes almost unreal. She reached for his hand, but he pulled away gently, not coldly, just distant, unreachable. "I ruined everything," she whispered. "Please, forgive me." Her voice broke at the last word, falling apart like glass. He looked at her for a long moment and finally said, "Why now?" She froze, unable to respond. Her lips quivered, her eyes searched his face for some sign of softness. "Because I can't live with what I did," she confessed. "I thought you'd hate me forever. I thought you'd fight, scream, but you didn't. You just disappeared. And that silence, it's killing me." He sighed softly, eyes drifting toward the empty street. "Silence isn't revenge," he said quietly. "It's peace." The words cut deeper than anger ever could. She wanted to beg again, to fall to her knees, but his calm told her it was useless. And as he walked away, her voice broke the night air. "Do you still love me?" He didn't turn around. After that night, she couldn't forget his silence. It followed her everywhere. It was heavier than anger, sharper than blame. When she tried to sleep, she heard it echoing in her head, louder than any argument they could have had. She began writing letters she'd never send, pouring out everything she should have said years ago. "I thought I'd have time," she wrote in one, her tears smudging the ink. "But I was wrong. You've moved on, and I'm still stuck in the past." Outside her window, the wind howled, carrying away her whispered apologies. For the first time, she realized, silence wasn't absence. It was closure, She began seeing him everywhere, but not in person, but in moments. The bookstore they once visited, the cafe corner where he smiled. Every place whispered his memory, and every reflection reminded her of who she used to be before she broke him. Meanwhile, he lived freely, unaware that his peace was haunting her more than any revenge ever could. One afternoon, she saw him from afar, laughing with someone new. His smile looked real this time, the kind that comes from healing, not pretending. Her heart sank as she realized the truth. She was just a chapter he had already finished reading. And she was still trapped on the page that ended in betrayal. She tried to call him one last time just to hear his voice again, but he didn't answer. The ringing tone felt endless, like time mocking her. She left no message, only silence, bed. She looked around the empty room. No friends, no laughter, no one left to blame. The world had moved on, except her. For a long moment, she sat perfectly still, listening to the quiet. And then she whispered the words she'd once expected to hear from him. "I forgive you." But the echo that came back wasn't forgiveness. It was emptiness. Days began to blur into nights, and her world slowly lost color. The walls that once echoed with confidence now stood cold and silent. The mirror she used to admire herself in now frightened her, because the woman staring back wasn't beautiful anymore. Her eyes were hollow, her smile forced, her voice trembling under guilt. Every reflection reminded her of what she had lost, not just him, but herself. She tried to distract her mind with work, parties and noise, but every laugh felt fake. Every face around her looked like a stranger's. And then one morning, she found herself staring at her reflection for too long, until she whispered, "Who are you?" Friends stopped calling. Family stopped asking. She had burned too many bridges, and now all that was left was the smoke. She sat in her apartment, the ticking of the clock her only company. Her phone, once filled with notifications and messages, now stayed silent. Sometimes she'd unlock it and scroll through old photos, smiling faces, moments that once felt eternal. But every picture had him in it, like a ghost she couldn't delete. At night, she'd hear faint sounds, a creak in the hallway, footsteps that weren't there, whispers from her own mind. She wasn't sure if it was guilt or madness. But whichever it was getting louder. One rainy evening, she stood by the window, watching water stream down the glass. The city outside was alive, yet she felt dead inside. In her trembling hands, she held a photo of them together, smiling, innocent, before the lies began. Her breath shook as she whispered, "You were supposed to chase me. Why didn't you?" Tears rolled down her cheeks as thunder cracked outside. The photo slipped from her fingers and landed in a puddle of spilled wine, red spreading like blood. That was the moment she knew. She wasn't waiting for his forgiveness anymore. She was waiting for karma to speak. It started small, almost unnoticeable. Her car broke down in the middle of nowhere, her phone died, and the rain began to fall harder than it should have. She walked miles, drenched and shivering, until she reached a gas station that looked half abandoned. The man at the counter stared at her strangely, as if he'd seen her before. When she handed him cash, her hand trembled, and he said softly, "You look like someone running from their own storm." That night, when she finally reached home, she found something odd, the old bracelet he'd once gifted her. Lying on her doorstep, she had thrown it away months ago. From that day, strange things followed her, a whisper when no one was around, shadows that seemed to move when she looked away. At first, she told herself it was stress, but soon even her reflection seemed to mock her, smiling when she wasn't. She began losing sleep, hearing his voice in her dreams. "You took my peace," it said. "Now I'll take yours." She'd wake up screaming, clutching her chest, her pulse racing. Her once perfect apartment now felt haunted, not by ghosts, but by her own past. Every night the same question echoed in her mind. Is this punishment or mercy? One evening, as she walked home from work, she saw him, not in person, but in a large street billboard. It was an ad for his new company, his face confident, his eyes calm, his name shining brighter than ever. Her breath caught. He had succeeded. Without her. Her steps faltered, and her vision blurred with tears. The world applauded him, while she hid from her own reflection. As she stood frozen beneath the rain, a car splashed water across her dress, soaking her to the bone. And that's when she heard it, a faint laugh carried by the wind. It sounded just like his. Her reputation, once flawless, began to slip. Whispers spread through her office like poison. Someone had leaked her messages, exposing every lie she told, every scheme she played to get ahead. Her co-workers avoided her gaze. Some pitied her, others smiled quietly behind her back. When she entered the meeting room, conversations stopped. Even her boss, and the one she once charmed so easily, looked at her with disappointment. "You should take some time off," he said coldly. That afternoon, she sat in her car, staring blankly through the windshield as rain dripped like tears down the glass. For the first time, she realized the throne she built was made of glass, and it had finally cracked. She tried to call her friends, but none picked up. One blocked her number. Another texted, "You got what you deserved." Her world shrank overnight. No allies, no admirers, just echoes of her own arrogance. Her apartment felt colder, emptier, smaller. The silence that used to comfort her now screamed. Her reflection had become unbearable. Too honest, too cruel. She smashed the mirror with her hand, but even then, her own broken face looked back at her from 100 sharp pieces. "You wanted to win," she whispered through trembling lips. "And you did." Until now. Somewhere deep inside, she knew this was only the beginning of her punishment. A week later, the final blow came. A viral post, screenshots, proof, her name trending for all the wrong reasons. Her betrayal wasn't a secret anymore. It was entertainment. People mocked her, dissected her, dragged her through digital fire. Even he saw it, the man she had once broken. But he didn't comment, didn't message, didn't even look her way. He simply watched in silence and turned away. As her world burned, she realized the cruelest truth of all. Karma didn't destroy her out of anger. It did it with calm, deliberate mercy. Because sometimes silence is the loudest punishment of all. It had been months since the scandal, months since anyone spoke her name without disgust. One evening, she found herself standing outside his office, pale, trembling, holding a letter in her hand. The building looked enormous, glowing against the dusk sky, filled with everything he'd earned and she had lost. For a long moment, she couldn't move. Her heels clicked softly on the marble floor as she entered, her reflection following her like a ghost in the glass doors. The receptionist looked up, startled, but said nothing. Maybe recognizing the woman who'd once broken the man who now owned the place. Each step toward his door felt heavier. Like she was walking toward judgment itself. He was there, calm, distant, surrounded by quiet success. When he looked up, their eyes met. The room fell silent, except for the faint ticking of a clock. She opened her mouth, but no words came. All the apologies she had practiced vanished. "I didn't come to ask for forgiveness," she finally said, her voice shaking. "I just wanted you to know, I finally understand." He leaned back, unreadable. "Understand what?" Her eyes filled with tears. "That when I destroyed you, I was really destroying myself." The silence that followed was suffocating. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. His silence was the closure she had begged life to give her. She placed the letter on his desk, trembling fingers leaving faint marks on the paper. "This is the last thing I'll ever say to you," she whispered. He didn't touch it. Didn't even glance at it. Just stared past her, not with hate, but with peace. That hurt her more than any anger could. She turned to leave, her heels echoing softly down the corridor, fading with each step. Outside, the night wind brushed her hair, carrying away her tears. She looked back once, through the glass, and saw him closing the blinds. That was the moment she knew. Her chapter in his story was finally over. When she returned home, the city lights felt dimmer, the air heavier. Her apartment, once a symbol of her success, now felt like a tomb filled with memories that refused to die. Dust had settled on the photos she couldn't bear to throw away. On the wall hung the same clock that had ticked through her worst nights, its sound now slow and haunting. She sat on the floor beside the window, watching the city move on without her. She whispered his name once, just to see if it still hurt. And it did. But this time, it hurt less like love, and more like acceptance. Maybe karma wasn't punishing her anymore. Maybe it was just letting her feel what he once did. Days passed quietly. She never heard from him again. One morning, she walked to the park where they'd first met, her hand clutching a single envelope. Inside was the letter she'd written but never sent. She placed it on the bench and watched the wind tug gently at its edges. "If someone finds this," she murmured, "maybe they'll understand what regret really means." The letter read only a few words. "I thought you'd chase me. I thought you'd beg. But you did something far worse. You moved on." She stood for a while, letting the morning sun warm her face, and for the first time in years, she smiled. Not from joy, but from release. As she walked away from the park, the air felt different, softer, lighter, as if the universe had finally exhaled. Somewhere in the distance, church bells rang. She stopped for a moment and looked back, the letter now gone, carried by the wind. Maybe someone picked it up, maybe no one did. But in that fleeting silence, she heard a whisper, her own voice, answering back from somewhere deep within, "It's over." And with that, she disappeared into the crowd, no longer the villain of her story, just a shadow learning to live with what she'd done. Because in the end, karma hadn't spoken through revenge. It had spoken through silence. In the end, I never raised my voice, never exposed her, never sought to destroy what she built. Life did it, gently, inevitably, perfectly. There's something poetic about watching truth unfold on its own. I learned that silence isn't surrender, it's strength disguised. That peace is louder than revenge, and patience sharper than anger. She thought I'd beg, but instead I watched her story end, the same way mine once broke. Only this time I didn't cry. I smiled and let karma speak.